Did you know that $850 billion has been wiped out of the NASDAQ by the top 10 fintech companies during the last year? Today is probably this year is the toughest IPO year in the last 30 years in the USA. SaaS revenues, software as a service revenues, multiples from an average of about 21.8 has gone down to 5.8. That's about a quarter of its price. So 75% of the value of publicly traded companies have been wiped out this year. Companies you would know, companies like Shopify, companies like Zoom Video, companies like Twilio, companies like Monday, all of them, 80%, since about a month ago, 80% of their stock has been wiped out. And you might say to me, but okay, so what? This is the public markets. We work in the private markets. No. The public markets is like the public market tail wagging the private market's dog. Because in all honesty, all we do is about 6 months behind the public markets become the private markets. And the private markets has been hit as hard as the public market. So a lot of the companies we are seeing are being hit somewhere in that region. There are significant headwinds right now. Headwinds globally with the macroeconomic situation. Headwinds around valuations. You get entrepreneurs or tech entrepreneurs trying to raise money at the raise you would have raised it a year ago and the amount you would have raised a year ago are fundamentally different. So there's headwinds around valuations, there's headwinds around the lack of liquidity in the marketplace. A lot of that liquidity that was there has dried up. So all those billions that were there, not the billions aren't there, they're just not being deployed right now because of the uncertainty in the capital markets. What was happening a year ago? What was happening? There was growth at all costs. You got money from your venture capitalists like me, and what do they do? You just grow, 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 grow. That's all I cared about was growth at all costs. Just grow your top line. I didn't care about quality of the revenue. I never even asked about the quality of the revenue. Is it quality revenue? I never looked at your gross margins. I definitely never looked at your EBITDA and your free cash flow. What's happening today? That's all changed. So if you've been on Mars for the last year and come back to planet Earth, you would not believe what you're seeing in today from what happened a year ago. So that's my introduction. So I'm Clive Butkow. I'm the CEO of Keynote Venture Partners, a disruptive digital tech venture capital company, fortunately based in Johannesburg. There's not many of us, but we're actually based in Johannesburg. We raised about R250 million. We've got 12 investments. And fortunately, our first fund has got already our multiples about 3 times multiple on revenue. So for every R1 million someone invested, that R1 million is now worth R3 million. So we're really having a good run, but at the same time, we're very hesitant right now because of what's happening in the marketplace. So my background, just to matter why I'm up here, my background, I was the CEO of Accenture South Africa from where I retired about 10 years ago, but I've always been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid, and then I worked in Silicon Valley for a number of years with some of the most iconic brands you would know. I've built a number of my own tech businesses, sold a number of tech businesses globally, and now, as I said, the CEO of Keynote Venture Partners. So what I'm going to talk about today really is the 10 ideas to go from, what do you need to do to go from a startup in South Africa or Africa, I'm going to specifically talk about South Africa, to go from a startup to be a scale-up. Now the talk I would have given a year ago would be very different because of the focus on what you need to focus on as entrepreneurs. Can I just get by a way of hands? How many of you are entrepreneurs in the room? Great, so most of you. How many of you are looking to raise capital? Okay, a large portion of you. So let me tell you something. Let me ask a question to you. There's boom times to bust times. Now, have you seen or have you ever seen companies that are driving growth and revenues booming and all the VCs want to put money into your company and there's more and more customers and all of a sudden those customers have dried up, the revenue slows down, the VCs are not chasing you anymore, they've pulled all their term sheets. Who's actually seen that? Okay, no one's honest here. Okay, let me ask the question again. Who's actually seen that or heard of that? Okay, that's much better. Because most of you, if you haven't heard of it, you're going to hear about it now. So I'm going to talk about the 10 ideas or 11 going from a scale-up to a startup. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about, which is very, very important. Now, this is not Clive's material. This is something I picked up from Y Combinator about being default allowed and default investable. And what they mean about this now, in the old days, as I said, we focused on growth opposed to efficiency. So we didn't worry about capital efficiency. How efficient is that spending of that capital that you're going through? So we all focused on growth, 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 growth. We told you as entrepreneurs, just grow your top line. And we didn't tell you about the bottom line. We didn't care about the bottom line. And we never cared about free cash flow. We didn't worry about that because there was so much liquidity in the marketplace that we knew if you're doing well, you can raise your next round of capital. And if you get it, there's something called a double three, triple two. So your first year of business, you go to $1 million. Then there's a $3 million. Another 3 takes you to $9 million. Then 2, 2, 2, 18, 36, $72 million. So if you're around the double three, triple two mentality of growth of your business, there's going to be a lot of capital on the other side waiting to invest at ridiculous valuations. Those days, unfortunately, are gone. So there's 2 things you have to look at as your startup. Number 1, do you have enough cash flow that you can get, or enough runway that you can get to free cash flow? So EBITDA positive. And that's what you call default alive. Okay? Because the problem is, what you have to assume now, today, how many of you have raised capital, types of capital? Just keep your hands up for 1 second. Okay, so let me make something you're not going to want to hear. It's not very popular. You got to assume right now, in the liquidity markets we're facing right now, that is the last round of capital you'll ever raise. Okay, so don't assume there's going to be another raise of capital. I'm a VC, and I can tell you that. There's very few companies right now that I would actually put more money into because they haven't got the numbers, the liquidity is not there, the valuations are not right. So what you have to look at is getting to default alive. And what that means is, with the amount of runway you've got and the cash flow that you've got, is don't get that you need further capital. Get to free cash flow that you can fund your growth out of cash. That's default alive. Typically happens at earlier stage companies. Default investable is where you can't get to your cash flow break even, you won't get to free cash flow, but your business is growing at the triple. And when you're growing at that sort of hyper growth, you're 1 in 100, there will not capital for the average business. Probably assume that the last round was your last. Okay, so let's talk about the investors. What do we do as investors? We back the jockey and not the horse. Now, particularly in today's times with these headwinds that we're facing. You know, in a times year ago where there was so much capital, if you had a few weak links on your founding team, so what? You've got enough capital to actually work. It's not too much of an issue. But today, you cannot have a weak link. If it's your first 5 people, 10 people, or 50 people, you cannot have a weak link in your founding team because it'll be caught out, and the chain is only as good as its weakest link. So today, you need to have the A team. You need to have what I call T-type entrepreneurs. T, which is the horizontal here, which is, I know enough about everything. Those first 10 employees they know a little bit about sales, marketing, product development, engineering, finance, human capital, everything. So they've got the horizontal there. So mile wide, inch deep. But then they're good at one thing. They've got the vertical skills. So that's what makes up the T. And the vertical is they're good at expertise in sales. So I'm a horizontal guy. I've always been a horizontal guy I know everything. I know a lot about it, a lot of things, a little bit about a lot of things, but my expertise is sales. So typically what we like to do when we invest in startups, so this is for our current businesses and our new business we're investing in, we want to invest in T-type entrepreneurs. So they're not specialists, because that vertical is just a specialist. So if you go to a corporate, you become a specialist in software engineering, or you come in something. So what we look for when we invest in companies, we look for 2 types of people. One is someone that can build the stuff, the hacker, and someone that can sell the stuff, the hustler. So we need a builder and a salesperson. Because without sales, you've got nothing. The biggest strength of companies is sales. The biggest weakness of companies is lack of sales. So you need to have those type of people. The second one is build your business where you birth it. There's too many people. I was sitting with an entrepreneur the other day. They literally had $1,000 of revenue. So we're doing 18,000 Rand or $1,000 of revenue. And they were already in 4 countries. And they were solving about 3 different use cases. I said, no. Hold on a second. This is not how you build a big business. So why aren't you just focusing in South Africa, where there's a big enough market in this country? I'm not saying this is applicable to every country. So everything I say today is not necessarily a one size fits all. It's not the bathroom robe model where you walk in and you use one size and it fits all. It doesn't one size fits all. But typically, South Africa, if you are building a business here or in Nigeria or in Kenya, whatever it might be, build your business where you birth it. So the very important thing is pick a target market. You don't have to go for your target addressable market or your service addressable market or your service obtainable market. It has to be large enough. Just pick a niche, go and dominate the niche, and prove all the things out like product market fit, etc. And then it's okay to start small in a segment and then grow your business at a later stage. But don't try and go to 4 countries and solve 15 different use cases when you've hardly got a business. Focus on one, and that's how you'll build a great business. Okay, the next one is get out of the building, find product market fit and go to market fit. Now, we've all heard these terms 100 times, and we talk about that. But let me just tell you, so I'm looking at two things on the slide here. One is at the early stage, which I'm calling venture, which is either seed or Series A, and I'm calling growth, which is Series B, Series C, or Series D. So it's your product market fit at the early stage in venture. Number of paying customers, what's your traction, what's your usage, what's your onboarding, etc. At the growth stage, it's more about user feedback, it's about retention, opposed to actually getting new clients. So it's very, very important about product market fit. The problem that you got with product market fit is that you go out of product market fit. So one of the biggest things I'm seeing with a lot of entrepreneurs that I'm seeing, and I think you need to ask yourself this question, if you think you've got product market fit, do you just have it with the early adopters? So the early adopters are buying your product because these guys love technology or whatever it might be, and they're buying your product. But do you have it with the early majority? Because that is only when you've got product market fit, is when you've got it with the early majority. So it's a false positive. When you say to me, you've got product market fit, I say, well, let me see your clients. I speak to the clients, and they clearly are just the early adopters. Big difference between having PMF for your early adopters to having PMF for your early majority. I hope everyone understands that you need to show me PMF. If I'm going to put $1 million into your company, I want to see PMF for the larger part of the market and not just for those early stage investors. So it's very important this. You can see I'm going fast. But if you look at product A and product B there, product A in the blue, you can see its percentage active stays at 50%. Clearly there's product market fit there. Product B just keeps on going down to zero, and there's no product market fit there. So you need to understand, do you have product market fit? I'm not going to go through go-to-market fit, but there's different criteria for if you validated your go-to-market fit, your RCPs, your users, your budget holders, to growth, where you've got the repeatable playbooks. So you go to market fit for growth, Series B, Series C, you have to have a repeatable playbook. You need that thing, that system to be working, and it keeps on working and working and working. So if I put in $1 million, I know I'm going to get $2 million or $5 million out. I don't want to put in $1 million and get $50,000 back. Okay, so your product must be 10 times better than your competitors, number 4. So if you really want, today's competitive environment, I mean, it's a nice environment if you can survive in this environment, because a lot of your competitors are closing down. There's not enough capital out there. So at least get to something that you can go to your client and say, this is why my product is better than, or my solution is better than what you're currently using. And you've either, even if it's just a feature, it's either a feature that's 10 times better than something else, or the solution is 10 times better than something else, or it solves the problem in a 10 times better way that you can. And remembering, being 10x better could be the buying experience could be 10 times better, or the onboarding experience could be 10 times better. But you've got to be better at something. Unless you're starting a completely new category, which most of you assume you're in payments, you're in fintech, whatever it is, you're just really competing with other players in the marketplace. You haven't started a new category. A new category is different, but that's very expensive because you have to educate your market. And please, just we're going to allow some questions just now, so you can ask questions. Understand the stage of business growth. A real issue I see with most entrepreneurs they don't see this. So first phase is searching for product market fit. We've already gone through that, how you search for it and make sure you've got not just the early adopters, but the early majority. Then you have to go to the second stage, which is the key one, which is search for repeatable and scalable and profitable sales model, a growth model or sales model. That's that part that you need, that you have to keep in. That's that thing that you have to systemize and get it working. And then I know if I put in $1 million, I'm going to get $5 million back. And the last one, once you've got that repeatable and scalable sales motion, is to I start scaling my business. So I can really take the business and I can scale it. And now I'm at Series B, Series C, and we go sing Kumbaya, and we go make a lot of money. Okay, number 6, make your process repeatable. So it's very similar to what I said before. But the problem with that middle phase there is that you don't know how long it's going to take. Because this is the phase, initially, when you're searching for a repeatable and scalable business model, it's initially done by the founders. You're proving your go-to-market, you're proving your product market fit, you're proving your sales motion. And then, only then, once you've proven that, do you start hiring account executives or a VP of sales or whatever it might be. But that search for a repeatable, scalable, profitable growth model can take 3 months, 3 years. It can take anything in between there. And you should not be going to the scaling the business phase before you've actually proven that second phase out. Because that's the phase is when I get interested as a venture capitalist, I get very interested in that phase. Because now I know it's repeatable. I can hire an account executive. I pay them R1 million. They give me 5 to 1. That's what I like to get, 5 times their OTE, overall total earnings. I like to get 5 to 1, and then I'm happy to pay them a commission on that as well. But then I know I'm putting in that $1 million and I'm getting $2, $3, $5 million out. And the risk on me is substantially lower than if it's an early stage company and you haven't actually proven that middle portion there. So understand, you don't know how, it's unpredictable how long that second phase is actually going to last. Now, I see entrepreneurs putting more fuel in the gas and the engine is not even working. So if you want to reduce your acquisition cost, you've got to get the engine working first before you put more fuel, more gas in the engine. Fix the engine and then put more fuel on it. Too often we get too excited because we've got 3 evangelist clients and we say we've got product market fit, let's go and hire 10 account executives or 2 or 3, whatever it might be, hire those sales guys, but they just don't work. They don't work because you don't have product market fit, you haven't got that repeatable sales motion yet. Once you've got it, then you start hiring them and then you can make a truckload of money. Because you hire 1, they bring back 5 times. You hire 2, they bring back. Always I say don't hire 1 at a time, hire 2 at a time because then you can compare them and see if one is succeeding or one is not succeeding. Cash is king. Cash is king. Now, Peter Drucker, the well-known management consultant or one of the best gurus in business, says the most important thing in business is free cash flow. And there's 3 things a CEO should be doing. 3 things. That's what I look for when I make an investment. Number 1, setting the vision and setting the strategy and articulating and communicating that strategy to all the stakeholders, investors, employees, the press, customers, etc. Number 2 is recruiting. The CEO should be recruiting. So number 1, as I said now, finding those, go and articulate the vision. Number 2, recruiting. And number 3, make sure you don't run out of cash. Because the most important thing at the end of the day, if you run out of cash, your business is dead. Now, I unfortunately had a situation recently where one of my businesses did run out of cash. Great business, multiple patents around the world. We were actually really starting to grow, but we grew ourselves out of business. With investors didn't want to put more capital in because of the uncertain times right now, and we had to close this business down. Very, very hard thing to go, but this is the nature of venture capital. We've got 11 fantastic businesses. We had 1 write down of a business. It really, really hurts, but it's life. And I hope none of you, if you learn these lessons, will actually go through that where you have to actually close your business down. So just when do you spend and when do you save? So conserve cash, that first 2 phases there on search for the product market fit and search for repeatable and scalable. In today's times with a lack of liquidity, you have to be very, very frugal how you spend your money in that phase. Spend literally no money. Bootstrap your company because that money is just not out there to spend more and more time because you won't raise it next round from your investor. Once you've got this thing and then the 3rd phase is when you go to scaling the business, you can invest aggressively. But too often I'm seeing now, people, either they get these false positives about product market fit, or someone has told them, some venture advisors told them they got product market fit, they should hire, and they're making fundamentally the wrong decision. They haven't yet reached that first 2 phases, and they really start putting more fuel on a broken engine. It just doesn't work. And eventually what they have to do is they start firing all those people because they realize, but then they've burnt all their cash and potentially run out of money. So you invest aggressively once you've got scale in the business. That's where you can hopefully raise capital. Maybe you have free cash. You can invest your own cash, but invest aggressively there for growth. And that's how you take a South African business or an African business and invest in it globally. Once you've found those first 2. But remember when you go global, you've got to reprove product market fit. You've got to reprove your go-to-market fit. So whatever your distribution channels are, if it's direct, if it's indirect, whatever it might be, you can't just assume because it worked in South Africa, it's going to work in Nigeria. You can't assume it worked in Nigeria, it's going to work in Kenya. You've got to reprove that it works in these multiple geographies. Okay, number 8, know your numbers. Very, very important. So I talk about free cash flow, but this is something that often when I speak to entrepreneurs, I say, no, my accountant's got the numbers. You have to know your numbers as an entrepreneur. You've got to understand, I'm going to just quickly go some of the metrics. What happens here is you plan your revenue growth and you plan your expenses. Your revenue growth starts slowing down, but your expenses don't slow down. What happens? You thought you had 18 months of runway, but what happens? Slow growth. You still got your high spend. You haven't reduced your spend yet because you still think you're going to do this. You're going to hit 6 in a row. It results in higher burn, shorter runway, less annual recurring revenue, and less investor interest. If you've got a plan of hitting certain revenue milestones to get you to free cash flow or get you to investor readiness, as I spoke about earlier, and your revenue line goes down, you've got to look at your expense line and actually reduce that as well. Because I saw a company the other day everything was going just unbelievably well. They were shooting the lights out. They had 18, 24 months of runway. All of a sudden, their revenue slowed down, and your compounded annual growth rate in your revenue, significant hit on the business, and their 24 months became about 6 months of runway. And they said, Clive, I've got 6 months of runway. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't invest in a company that's got 6 months of runway. If you had 24 months, I'm very happy to invest with my investment gives you 24 months. But with this problem and not taking into consideration, your 24 months goes to 6 months, and more than likely, these businesses that I'm talking about, unfortunately, are going to go out of business. So there's two very, very key capital efficiency ratios. Burn management, being the burn multiple, and then the sales efficiency on the vertical axis and the burn multiple, on the horizontal axis and the burn multiple on the vertical axis. These are probably the most two important KPIs that you can measure a SaaS business, or you can measure other technology businesses as well. So the burn multiple, all it says there, I'm just looking at it, says, burn multiple says, if you make net new monthly revenue, new revenue. So if you make $1 million of new revenue, but it costs you $1 million, that's $1 million over $1 million, it's a burn multiple of 1. That's good. That's really good. Anything below 1 is exceptional, because then you're spending $1 million and I'm getting 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million out. Typically in early stage businesses, because there's a lot of investment in R&D and in human capital, employing some more people, what you've the top left-hand corner, where you're not getting a great burn multiple, but that's okay. It's early stage, it's okay. But you have to be looking at these numbers, and if you are in that top left-hand corner, you can see your burn multiple is great, it's 1, so you're actually putting $1 million, getting $1 million out. But your sales efficiency ratio, which is a slightly different ratio, what that measures is the efficiency, the capital efficiency of your sales and marketing spend. So how efficient is your sales and marketing spend? So for every dollar I'm putting into sales and marketing, what's coming out the other side? And you can see that goes there from at the bottom axis of 0.25 to 1.5. Here you want to make the number greater than 1. Because if you're putting in more, if you're putting in $1 million to sales and marketing and I'm getting 1.5 million new revenue out, I've got a great sales efficiency ratio. If you're in the bottom left-hand corner, you're in serious trouble. You've got to change everything. You've got to change your R&D, you've got to change your sales and marketing, you've got to change all your spend. If you're in this top right-hand corner in the green area there, hallelujah. You've got a great burn multiple, you've got a great sales efficiency ratio, just keep on doing what you're doing now. But please remember these two ratios. They're absolutely critical when you go and see an investor, that you understand what these things are. So focus, insufficient focus. So again, I spoke about one of my companies, or before I invested, he was doing $1,000 a month, and they were in 4 countries, they were all over the place. But focus is interesting. There's whether it's true or not, but I've heard it from a number of people, of my ex-colleagues or colleagues in Silicon Valley, that Bill Gates Sr. and Warren Buffett were all sitting together in a bar having a drink. And some inspiring entrepreneur walked up to them and said to them, tell me one thing that I can do that's going to make my business successful. And all 3 of them stopped at exactly the same time and said focus. That's what it's going to take. And focus is not what you say yes to. It's more often what you say no to. A good entrepreneur will say yes to most things. A great entrepreneur will say no to most things. Because it's so seductive. You say, oh, I got a little bit of money from this client, or I sold to this vertical, or I sold to this. Let's keep on putting more and more money and chasing resources down there, which is the wrong decision. You've got to see where is that market, that critical niche that you're trying to focus on, and focus on that. So everyone comes to me, they've got a pipeline of 100 customers. I say, well, 100's too many. In these times, you don't need 100. Let's take the 25 top ones. Let's focus on the top 25. I know when I built my businesses, I went through the 2000 downturn. I went through the 2008 downturn. And that's what we did. We became obsessed with customers. Tom Peters, the guy who wrote In Search of Excellence, talks about his 8 principles of running and growing a great business. But the most important principle he talks about customer obsession. Falling in love with your customers, selling them, and then staying in love with them, staying close to them so you can on-sell them and upsell them later on. That is probably the best piece of advice that you possibly can have. So remembering, you've got to say no to the good things so you can say yes to the great things. It's very, very important. Say no to the good things so you can say yes to the great things. Focus is everything in a business, and it's one of the hardest things I find when I tell my entrepreneurs, because I'm too honest with them that they're not focused. I gave a talk to a lot of you on I think it was Monday at the boot camp, and spoke a lot about focus. And I wasn't very popular, people hearing the truth about they're already scattered too wide. Trying to solve too many problems, trying to put out too many products, trying to go into too many geographies. It just unfortunately doesn't work. So know how to scale, use the proven playbooks. People like myself and a lot of other people that have been in business for a long time, built a lot of business, have developed playbooks for how to scale a business globally. And what you do, so when I talk about horizontal and vertical expansion. Horizontal expansion, I'm talking about new geographies, so going into new geographies. Vertical expansion, I'm talking about new products. So that's how you expand. You either expand into new markets or you expand into new products, or both. That's just the way you expand. That's strategy. It's about allocation of resources, what do you want to do, and how you're going to do that. And you need to understand how to do that. If I'm going to go and open up an office in the UK, what's the best way for me to do that? In my experience, hire a general manager that's actually a salesperson That's the first person you hire, and they help hire up more people in there so they can have the culture of the company and they can do the hiring in those offices. Not everyone is a multi-product environment. One of my companies the other day, again, I was very unpopular. It's an edtech company, and we really have got product market fit in the college space, and they wanted to move into the school space. And I said, that's just an experiment. We should not be spending money, because at the end of the day, if we are going to reduce our runway, every time we spend more and more money on a market that's unproven and we're experimenting, we're going to reduce our runway. I was very unpopular, but I basically stopped that. I said, stop. We're not going to focus on that now. We're only focusing on what we're good at. We're focusing on what we've done well, and that's the focus of what we're doing now. As I said, I'm not popular, but I think we'll get it. We'll get the right answer. It's been able us to add about 12 months of runway to our business. So a common mistake you find with that is when you scale, once you're in that scaling phase, that's when you need to start hiring your salespeople, hiring your next part of your team. So founders, unfortunately, often remain in burn avoidance mode, where this is the time to now start spending. Remember I said invest aggressively here. This is the time to actually invest aggressively once you're scaling your business globally. Okay, not all capital is the same. So raise from smart investors. You've all heard about smart capital and dumb capital and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not here to have a halo around Kalon, but we are operators first. We are operators before investors. My team and I have built companies before. We know how to take it from 0 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 1,000 people. We've done that. We've built hundreds of millions of dollars worth of businesses. So what we do is we're the entrepreneurs behind the entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, a lot of African VCs, and I'm not knocking my competitors here, but they don't come from an entrepreneurial operational background. They come from a finance background, a actuarial background, legal background, or whatever it might be. They've never built a tech business before. And I see it where we've co-invested with a lot of these guys. I just see they have not got the right advice for these entrepreneurs, because clear to me they just have not done it before. So the point I'm going to make here is a founder's funder fit. Think about founders funder fit. When you go and raise capital, think about, I know you're desperate and you'll take money from anyone. But if you're not desperate and you can get a number of term sheets, think about what's right for you as a founder and the funder, and get founder funder fit, opposed to all the other fits that we're talking about. That's a very, very important piece of advice. Not all capital is the same. Because I'll tell you something, often you're going to regret the capital you've taken. Because once you take capital from someone, you're married to that person, and you can't get rid of them for 10 years. So make sure it's the right type of funder, else don't take their capital. So just how do we as VCs look at this? You'll see the risk profile. When you're scaling the business, if you're at that point, the risk to me is significantly less. So I'm going to give you a nice valuation, and I'm going to write you out a nice check as well, if you're at that later stage. Remember, we're a growth capital investor. We're not an early stage investor. So for early stage, it's the first 2 phases. But for a growth investor, it's the last phase. Okay, so in conclusion, are you ready to go out there and scale your businesses and make them global businesses? Yes or no? I hope so. So what did I come down here for? Okay, guys, I don't know how much time's left, but I've got some time for Q&A. I know I did rush that, but I did want to leave a little bit of time for any questions. Has someone got a mic there?
Clive, thanks. Great talk, and I always follow you. Spoke very well in Johannesburg in the Africa arena thing. Yeah.
Paid you to say that, no?
Quick one. What is the appetite of getting the great talent to want to work for a startup in the current environment, particularly the past 2 years? What's your experience? I mean,
sorry, just repeat the question. What's my experience of talent?
Yeah, talent. I mean, great talent. I know in South Africa, people aspire to work for the Vodacoms, the big companies. What is the current appetite, and what has been your experience in getting the great talent to work for a startup as opposed to working for an established big company?
I said the role of a CEO is to set up the vision, the strategy, and articulate that. They've got to articulate that to human capital. They're magnets. They've got to be able to sell their vision to those people you're talking about. I don't think those people want to go to Vodacom. I'll be perfectly honest with you. They might want to go to Vodacom instead of make for the first few years of their career. Just go and learn and become a generalist and learn as much as you can about it. The youngsters are different. The youngsters that are coming through, a lot of you are youngsters, actually want to go into entrepreneurial organizations. But the good guys have got good choices. They've got good AI skills or data science skills. They've got a choice of 100 entrepreneurs they can go to. So you as the CEO have got to sell them that vision of why they should join you. What's in it for them? Hope there's a bit of ESOPs and equity as well as a salary, but you've got to sell that to them. So I think if I look at anywhere in the world now, I think the new thing is People want to become entrepreneurs. They love it. They want to become self-sufficient. They don't want to necessarily have a boss, or not a boss in a big corporate. But if you look at the corporates, I spoke to someone in one of the banks the other day. She was head of innovation in one of the banks. They just closed it down. 50 people out of a job. 50 people just closed the whole thing down in a bank that was driving innovation. So, as the corporates are looking at their shareholders and saying we need to cut heads, the entrepreneurs are actually hiring. If I look at the growth we've had in our 12 companies, we've hired hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in our 12 companies. And we have to, also exactly what you said, we've got to attract that top talent. And we really are. The top companies and those top entrepreneurs really are attracting top talent. Okay, next question. Sorry, I hope I answered that question. There's a question at the back there.
Hi. It's a small question from our side. What is your thoughts or feelings on investment into pre-revenue companies?
Sorry, investment to what?
Into pre-revenue startups.
P2P.
Pre-revenue.
Sorry, pre-revenue, sorry. Look, we don't do it, I'll be honest. We made a few investments that were post-revenue but very early stage when just some of the evangelists have taken it. So, pre-revenue startups today in the VC space in South Africa and Africa, typically you're going to have to raise from angel investors. It's angel investors, it's family, family and friends. That's where the capital is going to come from, your first round of capital. But most VCs in South Africa, true VCs, are not going to go into a pre-revenue startup. That's not what VC is. VC is more about growth capital. But what you really want is some great, mentors and advisors that can put a check in, but not just give you money, actually give you advice and mentorship. That's actually what you're looking for. And that's what most of the pre-revenue startups have actually got their money from angel investors. Okay, there's a question over here.
Cool. Talking about scaling businesses globally, should African founders have the global scale in mind at the beginning of their journey or later on? Should we as African founders concentrate on, hey, how can I take my business ASAP internationally, or does that come later on?
I think it's a great question. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. So I think it depends what country you're birthing your business. I said grow your business where you birth it. South Africa, definitely not. You want to build a South African business that you'll take globally. We've done that with 6 or 7 of our businesses now. They're all global businesses now, but we got product market fit. We proved the product. We proved everything out. We paid for the engineering in South Africa. Nigeria, probably the same. Kenya may be the same. But maybe if you're in Ghana or you're DRC or something like that, where they're very small countries, it's like Israel. The Israel mentality, it's such a small country with 6, 7, 8 million people that they build it with, exactly your question, with an American stance from day one. One of the founders go to America and they start building the company in America while they're doing it in Israel because it's not a big enough market. So it all depends on the size of the market. If the market's big enough, focus on your market. Because if you can't prove your own market, I'll tell you, it's going to be 10 times harder proving it in another market. So, again, it's not a bathrobe, one-size-fits-all answer, but if it's a big enough market, build it where you birth it, in that market. A question at the back there? Oh, out of time. Sorry, last question. I already said that. Sorry, you're going to have to give me a bonus here. Sorry, I'm standing between you and lunch, so this is not good time for me.
Okay, awesome. Hi. So if you've got a business that's grown exceptionally well in South Africa and we've proven market fit and we've identified a few countries with a lot of potential, we've sort of invested to determine market fit in those regions and it's shown a lot of potential. But of course, capital in this kind of environment is very difficult to obtain. What would your recommendation be? Do you, ride the wave and sort of see it through and continue with the research because we want to see whether we can reap what we've sowed? Or would you recommend pulling out and trying to grow even larger our region before scaling?
Well, I think, you're absolutely right. Scaling to another market, for one, you're paying in euros, pounds, or dollars is expensive. So it's very, very expensive. So what we've done with probably over half of our businesses right now, we're just closing another round now. We've proven in a month in South Africa. We've now gone to about 15, 20 countries, and we're just using distributors. It also depends on your go-to-market motion. If you're using distributors, it doesn't actually cost a lot of money if you're using distributors to go to global markets. If you're going direct, and not indirect like through a distributor, then you actually have to raise capital. So you either default alive, you fund it out of free cash, which is going to be tough. But if you've got an incredible business that's growing 3x a year, you should be able to raise capital. But I propose this, try and raise capital from overseas investors. Because they'll have the network, they'll have the connections that can help you do exactly what you want to do a lot easier. So, yeah, it's a half-off type of answer, but either fund it out of free cash or try and fund it out of investors from overseas. Or else just keep on growing a South African business until you can or able to go and raise overseas capital. Thank you very much. Good luck to all of you. Have a fantastic day. Cheerio.